Welcome back to the deep dive. Today, we're not just looking at business history. We're doing something more like a psychological autopsy.
That's a good way to put it. We're diving into the birth of the global oil industry.
Specifically, the really bitter rivalry between Marcus Samuel of Shell and Henri Deterding of Royal Dutch.
And it's so easy to just see this as, a war over pipelines and barrels of oil. But what the sources show is that the real fight, the one that mattered, was a battle over mindset.
Right, we're looking at oil, the lifeblood of an era, and you realize that to control that kind of power, which is literally underground, you need a very specific kind of discipline.
That's psychological discipline.
Exactly. So the mission for you today is to pull out the patterns here, because the core question is just fascinating. Why did Marcus Samuel, this brilliant, charismatic guy who loved being seen,
He loved the status.
totally, why did he ultimately lose control to Henri Deterding, this cold, quiet guy who only cared about building an invisible system?
This is really the war between ego and structure.
It is, and our sources connect the dots so clearly, from strategic failure in the jungle right back to the psychological flaws of the leader.
So we're going to distill those truths and see how structure pretty much always beats spectacle.
Okay, let's start with Marcus Samuel. Let's unpack this trap of the first big win. He was a visionary, no doubt.
Oh, for sure.
And he decides to launch Shell's operations in the tropics. We're talking Borneo. And his first attempts there were, well, they were a complete and utter disaster.
It's just an absolute mess. It was because he had no basic systems in place. The stories are almost hard to believe.
I know. You've got ships showing up months late.
And when they finally get there, crucial drilling equipment is just missing, gone.
So they just dump everything else right on the beach, and the tropical rain, the humidity, it just starts rusting everything to pieces immediately.
Total chaos. Frantic. And, this gives us our first big insight.
Which is that nature, or you could say the market, it doesn't have to be malicious to just crush your plan.
Right. It doesn't need to be sabotage.
No. If you don't have a system, if you don't have a chain of command, simple things, a delayed ship, a missed deadline, illness spreading on the vessels, that's enough.
That's enough to destroy the whole vision.
Yeah.
Your vision literally rusts away on the beat.
Exactly. A lack of a reliable system is, in and of itself, a fatal flaw.
But here's the psychological trap Samuel fell into. Amidst all this disaster, all the death and sickness, he found oil.
He hit a massive gusher.
A huge one. And you'd think that's the win, but it became an illusion.
Because he thought, I found it, game over, I've won.
Precisely. The sources are really careful to point out this huge, often fatal gap between discovery and commerce. Finding the oil is that moment of euphoria. But a gusher, if you're already exhausted and disorganized, can be, and this is a quote, the first illusion of an exhausted person.
Wow. So he was so distracted by the excitement of being the discoverer that the actual system for delivering the oil was just...
It was decaying all around him.
Yeah.
He couldn't see it.
But hold on, why couldn't he just hire people for that? You find the gusher, that's a genuine win. Why couldn't he just bring in better managers to build the system? Why did he fail?
Because Samuel was putting his own internal needs, his ego, ahead of the company's needs.
Okay.
You see him getting pulled in a dozen different directions. He's totally lost focus on Borneo. He's fighting to renew these critical contracts with the Rothschilds.
He was also dangerously dependent on Russian oil fields, right? Which were incredibly unstable.
Totally unstable. And on top of that, he was terrified of Standard Oil, which was this global behemoth.
And then came the ultimate distraction, the crown jewel for his ego.
He takes on the role of Lord Mayor of London.
Which is this hugely time-consuming ceremonial role. So he's picking status and ritual over the gritty, horrible work of fixing a supply chain in a jumble.
Thousands of miles away, yeah. And that split focus is what leads to this unexpected punch, the truth bomb.
Delivered by his own friend, Fred Lane.
Who saw the whole thing was about to collapse and just laid it out for him in a letter. And Lane's words were just brutal. He said, "How do you run things? Threw capital out, shouted loudly, then trusted in God."
Oof. You can't run a business by only checking in when you have free time.
That's the killer line. It tells you everything. The failure wasn't external. It was internal.
The structure he built was just a mirror of his own disorganized mind.
Ego thinks talent is enough. Structure knows it requires discipline, relentless discipline.
Which is the perfect pivot to the other side of this coin. Royal Dutch,
Yeah.
and Henri Deterding.
Right. Because unlike Shell, Royal Dutch had a near-death experience that forced them to build a system. It saved them from that complacency Samuel had.
The sources talk about this one terrifying moment. It was a rumor that started spreading at a New Year's Eve party
The worst kind of party rumor.
that their oil reservoirs were filling up with salt water, and it was true.
The stock just tanks. The market panics. And the company is right on the brink.
A total moment of truth. They drilled what? Over 100 failed wells?
Over 100 failures. They could have just given up. But they didn't. And their comeback wasn't another lucky gusher. It was the resurrection of right thinking.
I like that. They stopped gambling and started building a system based on facts.
So what did that system actually look like? It wasn't just, let's hire some geologists.
No, it was a complete overhaul. They stopped just drilling wildly and started focusing on finding leaks in their existing pipes. They brought in new tech.
They professionalized management. And crucially, they got really systematic about diplomacy and local governance.
This meant it was more than just bribes, right?
Way more. It meant building stable, long-term relationships with local leaders in places like Perlac. That gave them security and worker stability that Shell just couldn't dream of.
So when they found oil in Perlac in just 6 days after all those years of failure, that wasn't luck.
It was engineered stability, and the man leading this transformation was Henri Deterding.
Described as cold and pragmatic.
The man who just refused to be led by emotion. Not the high of a discovery, not the panic of a crash. He was a master of simplification.
But is that just a nice word for ruthless? I mean, where does pragmatism become toxic?
And that's the key distinction, isn't it? Deterding's coldness wasn't about malice. It was about efficiency. He simplified problems down to their absolute core.
So the solution becomes obvious.
Exactly. He looked at numbers like they were blueprints, not, attached to people, which let him make these incredibly fast, logical moves.
And his famous mantra, unity is strength.
That wasn't some moral crusade. It was pure math. It was a pragmatic way to avoid getting crushed by Standard Oil, an operational tactic, nothing more.
It's the difference between wanting to look strong, like Samuel, and wanting to be strong, like Deterding.
Which brings us right to the showdown, the negotiation for the merger.
The 60-40 split that created this global giant, and that negotiating table was really the final battleground for their two completely different psychologies.
Samuel was fighting for his dignity, for status. He wanted a 50-50 split. He was desperate to keep the English flag flying over the whole thing.
And Deterding just didn't care about the flag at all.
Not one bit. He wanted operational control. He was happy to let Samuel wave whatever flag he wanted.
As long as he was the one holding the flagpole.
And controlling the majority share.
Yeah.
Status meant nothing. Control was everything.
And when Shell was exposed as being weak, dependent on Russia, internally, a mess Deterding's move was so fast and so clear.
He delivered what the sources call a knife-like ultimatum.
He basically told Samuel, look, I'm being generous. It's 60-40, my way. If you walk out of this room without saying yes, the offer is gone, and I will watch your company fail.
Just absolutely brutal. And that moment, it just crystallizes this huge lesson.
When you're weak, people call it a negotiation.
But when you're even weaker, they just call it an ultimatum.
And Samuel had to swallow his pride. He sacrificed control, his ego, but he saved Shell from being completely wiped out.
The pain of losing that control is what saved the company. It's a hard truth that sometimes your ego is the very first thing you have to sacrifice to survive.
Okay, let's zoom out a bit. From the individual to the institutional level. Because we have to talk about the huge Russian wild card here.
The oil fields in Baku. Yeah, the chaos there was on another level.
This was Shell's Achilles heel. The conditions were just horrific. Constant strikes, revolution in the air, violent ethnic conflict.
Rigs on fire, earthquakes.
Yeah.
Smoke so thick it literally blocked out the sun. It was pure institutional collapse.
And here's the really shocking part. Oil, the very thing that should have been the nation's economic engine.
It became a superhighway for revolution. The infrastructure that was built to move oil, the pipelines, the railways, the offices, it got repurposed almost overnight.
For what?
For distributing secret printing presses, for coordinating strikes, for moving weapons. The resource itself didn't cause the revolution.
But the decaying institutions weaponized the resource.
Exactly. And the conclusion from that whole chapter in Russia is so relevant today. When your institutions, whether they're a company or a country, start to rot from corruption or division, resources can't save you.
They just make the fight more intense.
And the revolution more efficient. It just confirms what we started with. Corporate strategy is just a reflection of individual psychology and national institutions.
An enterprise is psychology with a balance sheet. A nation is collective psychology with territory.
And every single layer has to have a healthy system to survive.
Okay, that brings us to the synthesis. Let's distill this. We've pulled 5 core principles of structure from this whole oil war that you can apply to, well, any competitive environment.
Principle 1 is compulsory balance. Every system needs it. Samuel had the supply, the gusher, but no market structure. That imbalance is fatal.
If you have knowledge but no way to apply it, you fail. You have to invest in all parts of the system.
Principle 2. Dependency is a noose. Shell's reliance on Russia forced them into decisions based on fear. It destroyed their negotiating power.
Diversification is the start of freedom. That's the takeaway.
Third principle. Power is controlling the tempo. Deterding moved fast, but he wasn't hasty. He believed slowness is dangerous. The winner isn't just the one with resources, it's the one with discipline in execution and speed in decision-making.
Principle 4. Ego chooses ritual. System chooses efficiency. Samuel loved being Lord Mayor. Deterding loved being obeyed. Status doesn't generate cash flow in a crisis.
Results do. The system demands efficiency, not ceremony. And number 5, institutional health. We saw it in Baku. Don't pour your talent or money into a weak or corrupt institution.
You're just pouring gasoline on a fire.
Find systemic health before you commit your energy.
So those are the historical principles. Now let's make them personal. 5 lessons for you, the listener, drawn right from this history.
Lesson 1. Don't just have talent, your personal oil. You have to build a system. Ask yourself right now, do you have processes? Or is your work life like that Borneo site?
Ships arriving late, things rusting on the beach, always putting out fires.
If it is, your talent will just rust away.
Lesson 2. Don't depend on one source of life. Are you totally reliant on one big client? One job? One person? Fear lives in that kind of dependence.
Just like Shell needing Russia. It forces you to act out of panic, not wisdom. So diversify your anchors.
Lesson 3. When your world changes, your ego has to be the first thing you sacrifice. Samuel had to learn the difference between needing to win the negotiation and needing to survive the crisis.
So you should ask yourself, am I focused on being right or am I focused on getting through this?
Lesson 4. Speed is clarity, not haste. Deterding was fast because he simplified the problem, so if you're delaying a big decision, be honest.
Are you waiting for more data or are you just afraid of the decision itself? Clarity is what creates speed.
And finally, lesson 5. Aim to maintain the rhythm, not to achieve some explosive importance.
This might be the simplest truth of all. People don't fail because they miss one big breakthrough, one gusher. They fail because they can't maintain a steady rhythm.
In their health, their finances, their learning, their relationships.
Focus on the steady beat of the system, not the one-time explosion.
In the end, this whole deep dive really shows us that the winner isn't always the most visionary or the bravest. The winner is the least delusional.
Samuel had the vision, but Deterding had the discipline. And he understood that a vision without execution is, well, it's just a hallucination.
Your life has a flow to it, a rhythm. And if you let that rhythm depend entirely on external things, your boss, the market, a lucky break, you're going to live in constant panic.
You'll always be fighting the jungle. But if you build that internal system, you gain control. You gain stability. You gain freedom.
So the ultimate question for you today is a really defining one, and you have to be honest with yourself. Are you spending your energy building an aura to impress other people? Or are you building the repeatable, robust system that will actually sustain you?
Think about that.
We'll see you next time for the next deep dive.